So, Betty Martin, it's a delight to have you here. I'm so thrilled that you took the time to join us for this interview as part of our Save Your Photos Month and Save Your Stories. Because here at Ponga, we really believe that it's the stories that make our photos so precious, so valuable. It's like the difference between a postcard you buy off the rack and the one that your husband sent you when you first met.
Yeah,
So those are the kinds of things that just send tingles down your back, and that's
yeah.
what makes a real story. I was very touched when I started following you on Instagram, and you started talking about the um, uh, your own stories and the way to come back to the simple 6-word memoir that really gets to the heart of it. And you talk so much about pictures that absolutely set me off, and I knew we just had to do something.
Yeah, yeah.
So it
Thank
was a
you.
delight
Thank
to
you.
finally meet you. Tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about what got you started and what you're doing with your business today.
Thank you for asking. I'm very pleased to finally see you face to face. We've been interacting on Instagram for some time, and I love those connections. I love Instagram for the way it connects me to different people. I have been a journalist for my entire professional life. Been a writer for as long as I can remember. I have a degree from Columbia's journalism school, and I very quickly realized that I wasn't so much a reporter, gather the facts. I was really interested in people's lives. So that's been a motivating thing, really, for a long time now. I am not going to count the years because that's higher math, and I don't go there. I've written for a lot of different organizations, primarily over the years, foundations and nonprofit organizations, writing about the work that they do. And invariably, it's about the people and getting to the stories of what motivated the people and how the people these organizations served, how their lives were changed. So that's what I spent a long time doing. I still do some of that. I love it. Um, but it also led me to personal history, is what it's called. And I started working with people and continued to do that who want to tell their story. They're not writers, they'd rather speak. And so I will work with them over the phone, certainly now over the phone, in person, previously when I could, although I worked with people all over the country. And they'll talk and I'll write their story. And it can be a chapter, it can be two. I call them chapters. We work in sort of 60 to 90-minute segments. And the business that I established is called In Your Own Words because it's their voice
Yeah.
and an individual's voice that I retain, but to translate the spoken word into the written. So that's one facet of what I do. I work with people who are writing their own memoirs and help them shape and edit their stories. I have a beautiful 96-year-old client in your part of the world. She's in Santa Cruz. I'm in New York. And she's writing her story, and it's fabulous. She's one of these rare people who's actually a better writer than she thinks she is. So that's the big picture. Some years ago, hard to know, 3, 4, 5 years ago, when I started posting on Instagram, I started with the usual, one line, two line. And then I found these stories began to take on a life of their own. And that is the thing that I try and convey to people, help them learn how to do in my workshops. So now I give these online workshops called Bite Size Memoir. And basically, what it is a way to learn how to use a photograph, any photograph from your past or present. It doesn't have to be historical, in the way we think of old family photos, and use those photographs as a jumping off point to write your story. And what's so exciting about it to me is that it invariably takes you to a place you didn't know you'd get to,
Mhm.
because there's so many layers to a story. There's so many connections there. The people in the picture, there are people who are not in the picture, but who are important to the story nonetheless as it evolves. They're the relationships as we all have them set up in our minds, who this person is to me. And then there's the next layer of the story of a relationship. And there are just so many pathways like this that a photograph can lead you into. And I don't know, Barbara. I really think what it serves is to help us each know ourselves better.
Yeah.
And that's the most valuable thing about it to me.
Yeah.
In addition to providing, I have children who aren't particularly interested in family history. It's the stage of life or whatever. But they're going to have stories that I never had growing up, about all different kinds of relatives because I've written them. And people have said to me, "Oh, you should write a memoir." And I say, "Well, I think that's what I'm doing, but I'm doing it just I feel like writing about this photograph now, or I feel like writing about that photograph." There's no sequence. It doesn't matter because each one is a discrete little journey, and obviously they all do connect up. It's your story, it becomes your story. There, I just talked a lot, didn't I?
That's beautiful, and it's really interesting that you should pause on that note of these distinct little journeys and the
Mhm.
sense of a narrative,
Yeah,
because at Pongo we're building a way to tell a story in a picture, and even in a collection of pictures, because you
yeah,
can have an album of pictures,
yeah,
but each picture is, yeah, its own little journey.
it
And
is.
we've had people ask us about, well, wait a minute, it's not linear. Or they
Right,
say it doesn't have a beginning and an end. What are you doing? That's not possible.
right.
And mind explodes. Just trying to think about how to bring people into to take off the shackles their teacher put them in.
Yes, exactly right. That it has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that it has to connect up with everything else that's going on out there. It does connect up with everything else that's going on out there, first of all. That's just a given. And it doesn't need to be in any order. And for me and for the wonderful people, and I've had the opportunity to work now, I only started giving these workshops last fall. So I've had the opportunity to work with several dozen people, who've attended the small groups of, anywhere from 5 to 10 people, depending. Um, and each workshop goes for 3 sessions, 3 weeks. And each each photograph is an exploration, and it's an exploration, and it varies according, it's different for each different person. We're all different. We come with different intentions and desires, so some people really will go very deeply into their own experience. Others will really write a story that says, "Oh yeah, we were doing this, that, then, there, when, how, what," that kind of a thing. Excuse me, with really colorful detail. Memories, details they don't even realize they remember. But in the process of the writing, there's something about writing that frees it up, that brings you someplace you don't necessarily go just by glancing at a picture.
Yeah,
Even if it's a really familiar photograph, one that you've looked at a million times.
yeah,
In fact, that can inhibit you. It can sort of lock you into the, "Oh, yeah, I know what this is. I know how I feel about that."
right.
Yeah, maybe, but maybe there's more to it. Because what you do, so say you're looking at a photo that, for me, I first went overseas when I was 18 and started my traveling life then. The person I was when I took those photos is not the same person I am now. So I can look at that photo and understand it very differently. And the value in that Insight is everything as far as I'm concerned. It really is. And, it doesn't mean we need to rewrite. It's not about rewriting history. It's about when you're a little bit older, even though we're all a little bit older than we were yesterday, you have more dots to connect. That's a good way to look at it. You just have more dots to connect and different perspectives to bring. And one of the really exciting things about the photo writing for me is exactly that, the way people make that, they how they view their past experience from a present day perspective. And it's very valuable. I mean, it can help us, it can get us unstuck in ways. So, just to get a little personal here, not that I haven't written a ton about it, because I have. My mother died when I was 20. And back then, nobody talked about it. You just kind of moved on. There was a whole story around it. And, although that story has sort of been central to my life since then, even writing about it now, that thing that is so central to my life, that I have spent so much time thinking about and analyzing and going to therapy for and all kinds of things, writing about it, it still shines lights on different aspects of it and lets me realize a little bit more, who am I now in relation to that event? So that I'm not just that 20-year-old or that 30-year-old or that 40-year-old. Who am I now? And it's beautiful. It's just really beautiful. It's a beautiful process because it's small enough to not feel intimidating. I try very hard, not that I have to try that hard, it's just sort of the structure of the workshop, that it's very safe, the way we share our stories and the way people respond in supportive ways. And it allows people to unfold, to
Yeah.
experience this process and unfold in a way that, the feedback I've gotten has just really been fabulous about how supportive and insightful, how creative and open people become, how they feel.
You know,
So,
opening yourself to be vulnerable
mm-hmm,
is,
yeah,
well, like falling in love in the sense that you have to, you can't get there if you don't open up.
right,
And we know, we've realized in our software, we talk about kind of the technology mindset, sharing, sharing. Yeah. It's like calling all human interaction sharing.
sharing.
No,
Yeah, yeah,
there
yeah,
is
yeah,
so much
exactly.
more happening. And we've started to really learn from our members, from our own interactions with our members and ourselves using our own software, the magic of these kinds of interactions. We
Oh, yeah,
started doing what we call these zoom in events, as in you zoom in and out of the software and you
yeah,
zoom over
yeah,
Zoom.
yeah.
And it started as, demonstrations. But very quickly, what happened is they were storytelling and
Very
they were
cool.
groups. And then we would do another one a month later, and a bunch of the people who came to the first one come again. And they've been using the software for a month.
Well,
What's happening?
yeah, what's happening is something that has been happening throughout human history. This is how we share knowledge, is through stories. I don't care what it is you're sharing knowledge about, the way people understand each other and themselves is through stories. So what we're both doing, is that we're helping to facilitate that storytelling, um, that's already in us, that we each crave. And
Yes.
you're doing it in a way that lets multiple people feed into one story. That's one aspect of what you do, which is brilliant as far as I'm concerned. And, the way I do it is a little bit different and lets people, go within to bring out what they may
Yeah.
or may not know is already there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, they're just all parts of the same thing. But
Yeah.
that need to share stories is human, it's universal. And what's it's interesting because the more and more time it seems that we spend on our devices, the more and more people crave stories. And you see the storytelling stuff popping up in so many ways
Right.
all over the place,
Right.
right?
Right. One of the things you mentioned was bringing in all of these kinds of connecting it with everything else. You were talking about how these, the telling stories lets us take this moment in time and connect it to everything else in ways that we are connecting all of these things. From a technology perspective, we not only allow people to come in, multiple people come into the same point and share their stories, tell their stories in this
Right.
environment, but also respond to each other as well as bringing in the
Fabulous.
evidence,
Really, really
the
fabulous.
evidence in terms of a documentation. I know she was born in 1864 because here's the birth certificate, or to be able to bring in the I was inspired today by the haiku of the frog jumping into the pond. Who was the author? Who was the moment? Ah, Basho, here it is.
Uh,
And bring it in to just,
yeah,
just like I pulled it off the shelf and showed it to you,
yeah,
because that's what we do as people.
yeah.
Never mind the technology.
Exactly.
We're just letting the technology help us
Help us
bridge
have
time
the
and space.
conversations, right? Instead of the extended family all living in the same town, able to get together and exchange this information, we're spread out.
Yeah,
And it's a different way to bring that same thing that's been happening throughout time
yeah,
to the
yeah.
fore. Yeah.
Well, I
Fabulous.
don't. We can go on all
We could.
afternoon.
This is the Mutual Admiration Society here, so we could go on. When you see people spark, it takes me back to one of my first clients. This guy he was 83. So I mean, he had a life I can't even begin the stuff he did, from deep sea diving to whatever. Anyway, he and I would sit there, and he had all his faculties. I mean, he was completely present. We'd sit there for 90 minutes, and he would tell me a story, and I would ask questions that made him say, "Oh, I never thought of it like that." Do you know how rewarding it is for someone like me to hear that from anybody? But especially somebody, 83 years old. Oh, I never thought of it like that. Whether we're talking about his childhood in Brooklyn or his relationship to his son or whatever it was, to awaken that through whatever process, to me is it's such a gift. Such a gift. So yeah, that's why I love it. So thank you for recognizing that. I appreciate that so much. Appreciate that so much. Yeah, amen. Oh, well, this is great. Thank you so much for the opportunity,
Well,
Barbara. I really
thank
appreciate
you.
it. I'm so glad to meet you. Beautiful. All
All
right.
righty.
Thank you
Well, I
so
will be talking to you soon, and thank you so much.
much. Now, the pleasure is mine.